With today being the last day that NFL teams can visit with prospects for 30 visits, the hay is officially in the barn, and it's going to be a matter of time till the Seahawks are on the clock next Thursday. We're a week away. Who are the best bets for the Seahawks to take at 18 overall? We're going to be breaking it all down here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, here for our Wednesday episode by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s that are tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, whether you're listening from nearby Nampa, Idaho, or down in Wichita, Kansas. We are a week away from the festivities in Green Bay, today being the final day that teams can bring in prospects for official 30 visits. We've basically reached the end of the pre-draft process. We are going to be tackling the tackle position today, first rounders, day 2 and day 3 gems. And we're going to talk some best bets now that we're just a week away from the first round kicking off in Titletown. We're going to dive into all that here on a jam-packed Wednesday episode. Without further ado, let's get to it. Now for your lead story here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. It might be hard to believe because it felt like it was just yesterday that the Senior Bowl and the NFL Combine were going on, but we are a week away from the NFL Draft in Green Bay. John Schneider and company wrapping up their 30 visits today, the final day that teams are permitted to bring players in. The two that have been announced today, Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, and Za Frazier, the cornerback from UTSA, both being in the house for that final day of visits. We know that the Seahawks are scheduled to pick at number 18. It's so weird, Rob, this time of year. There have not been any trades made. All 32 teams have their native picks in the first round, which is just unheard of going into a draft. And yet that's where we are at right now. Seattle's scheduled to pick number 18. It's time to talk best bets for that pick. And rather than you and I just reading off our top 5 lists, you and I are going to have some fun with this. We're going to have 6 players apiece, and we're going to start off with what we like to call the dream scenario. Maybe 2 players that are very unlikely to be there at 18, but in a dream scenario, they are there. I'm curious which 2 players would check off that box for you.
Well, I think that initially you have to kind of just acknowledge the fact that the Seahawks have a huge gaping hole at the left guard position. I mean, possibly you're going to see Satoa Laumea or Christian Haynes move over there. But of course, they were alternating at the right guard position. They have not addressed the vacancy that was Laken Tomlinson. As much as that makes me kind of chuckle considering how he played. But I think that Kelvin Banks from Texas would be one of those dream scenarios. I actually think that he's going to go a couple of picks earlier. Likely, to me, his floor is the Arizona Cardinals at number 16 overall. But if he is available, I just view him as having the physicality to be able to play the left guard position, and certainly the agility to be able to play left tackle. And of course, Charles Cross entering the year 4 of his rookie contract, and Abe Lucas struggling with injuries entering year 4 of his contract as well. I think that would be an absolute slam dunk selection if Kelvin Banks were somehow available to the Seahawks. And I'll mention Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon. And Corbin, I've looked at mock drafts out there from others that are writing these types of things. And I know that Derek Harmon is not going to be viewed as a, run to the podium. Oh my goodness, this is your dream scenario kind of situation. That said, I watch a lot more tape than some of the other folks out there who are watching or who are writing these mock drafts. Have some conversations with NFL scouts out there. Derek Harmon is one of the most easily among the most physical 18 players, most talented 18 players in this draft. So to me, that also would be a dream scenario. If either Kelvin Banks or Derek Harmon are available, I think Seattle restocks the line of scrimmage.
You and I are in agreement on Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas. He is one of my dream scenarios. In fact, I will be stunned if he's there past pick 14 because I could see the Indianapolis Colts there making a move for him. But I think that if Banks is there at 18, that has got to be one of those, not just running to the podium. Like, this is where having all the technology we have, like, get your phone out and text real quick. Like, hey, Roger, I know we were just on the clock and you've got a commercial break that you want to get in, but we want to draft before the commercial break. We've got our pick ready to go. Kelvin Banks Jr., his film, I know he's never played guard at Texas, but when you watch the film, like, he screams zone blocking guard. He is maybe the best zone blocker in this draft class. I love watching how fluid of an athlete he is, and there's some nastiness and finish to him at the end of his blocks. I think he'll be better as a pass protector inside too. So I would be really excited about that. For me, the other player that would be a dream scenario is Tyler Warren from Penn State. I just think he is a phenomenal football player. Seattle's got Noah Fant going to the final year of his contract. And then after that, you got A.J. Barner. And really, Brady Russell's probably your number 3 tight end. They need to add somebody else, especially in the scheme. They're running a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets. They need somebody that can catch the ball, can block, maybe play some fullback. Tyler Warren can do all of that stuff for you. Just a dynamic playmaker. I don't think he gets past the top 12, 13 picks, but if he's there at 18, that's another one that I'm rushing to make that selection. Now, the next group we've got, these are just your surefire guys that maybe have a realistic chance of being there, number 18. And Rob, I could have put 8 or 9 players here, but you and I both have 3 that we're going to be discussing. And for me, the 3 players that pop up there in the run the card scenario, they're surefire players that have a chance to be there at 18. I'm going all defense here, believe it or not. Nick Emanuwari from South Carolina, we've talked about him ad nauseum. The 6'3", 220-pound playmaker. You can't tell me Mike McDonald would not be screaming to the top of his lungs at John Schneider, get that pick in now, if Nick Emanuwari is there. And Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle for Michigan, another player that Mike McDonald at least is going to have intel on from previously coaching at Michigan. Kenneth Grant is a massive human being. He has his own orbit, and yet he's extremely athletic. This guy can play nose tackle for you, 3 tech. He's even played some 5 tech before, which is insane for a player of his size. He's another one that I am rushing to the podium for. And this is a guy that was a dark horse for me a few weeks back. Now I very much think he is in the mix at number 18. Donovan Ezeraku, Gumby, as I like to call him, from Boston College. Seattle has been looking at edge guys throughout this pre-draft process. Ezeraku is a player that just screams Mike McDonald defense as a 3-4 outside linebacker that can just pin his ears back, get after the quarterback. He's physical for his size, and he's a guy that could be a team captain very quickly in the locker room. Guys at Boston College rave about him. So all 3 of those players are guys that I think are run the card. They're surefire, top 20 talents that have a chance to be there at 18 that would make sense for Seattle.
Yeah, and just as you said, we've talked so much about Nick Emanuwari, the safety from South Carolina. I've talked so much about Missouri's wide receiver, Luther Burden III, that I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about him here. I think that he would be a hand-in-glove fit for a Seahawks squad that frankly needs more receivers that can create after the catch. In my opinion, he is the best at that in this draft class. So if he were available 18, to me, he is a selection. Certainly, that is the same scenario here with Gray Zabel, who, again, we have talked about so much. But I just acknowledging the fact that the Seahawks have prioritized the Senior Bowl as much as any team in all of the NFL, and Gray Zabel was a superstar, in Mobile. And so his positional versatility, his durability, his football intelligence. It just said in the opening of the show today, sir, that, the Seahawks had Will Johnson from Michigan in here. I don't know that it is a dream scenario because the fact that he has had some injuries that have basically kind of knocked him out of the pre-draft process. But I just see a guy who's 6'2", he's 195 pounds, and he has the physicality, he has the height and the ball skills, the ability to take an interception and return it back for a touchdown, as he did in setting a Michigan record with 3 touchdowns off of interceptions over his career. I think that absolutely screams Mike McDonald and the Seahawks.
Let's talk dark horses now. Who is the player that nobody's talking about that could magically be picked number 18, especially in a draft that is blanketed by uncertainty, which I don't know that I've seen one that's blanketed by uncertainty as much as this one, Rob. Look, Donovan Jackson was the player I was going to go with here, and he would have been my runner-up because I do think Donovan Jackson could be a guy that sneaks into the first round. I just don't know if it's pick number 18. The player that I have heard buzz about since the combine, however, and look, if Teteroa McMillan is picked in the first 15 picks, which I think it's a really good chance he is, Seattle wants a big-bodied receiver with DK Metcalf now being gone. Jaden Higgins, I will be stunned if he's not a first-round pick. I'm going to go that far at this point because he is a really athletic guy. He gets after in the blocking game. He is a younger player than some of the other receivers that are going to be picked in the first couple rounds. And I just look at the size, the playmaking ability, downfield threat, blocking. I just think he's going to be a tough player for a team like Seattle to resist if he's there at 18 and McMillan has already been picked. So Higgins is my real dark horse here, with Donovan Jackson being my runner-up there.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm actually going to stick with the wide receiver position and actually have some ties to what you mentioned with Donovan Jackson. I think that he would make awful lot of sense. He is one of my absolute favorites, just because of the 4-year starter, the five-star pedigree that he possesses, the positional versatility. I'll stick with the Ohio State Buckeyes. And look, Emeka Egbuka is not a player that no one is projecting to the Seahawks. I think that, but at the same time, I think that he is so damn safe that he makes an awful lot of sense. This has been a risk-averse Seahawks squad here because they have kind of swung and missed a little bit in the first round over the last couple of years. And you look at Cooper Kupp, and as excited as I am about Cooper Kupp, look, I went to Central Washington rather than Eastern Washington, but at the same time, I see Cooper Kupp as a player that if he is healthy, sure, you're good with he and JSN and likely a predominantly 2 wide receiver set. However, in the 8 years that Cooper Kupp has been in the NFL, he has been healthy all season long once. And so I do think that wide receiver is a significant position of concern for the Seahawks. As I argued a moment ago, Luther Burden to me is the guy that has the best run after catch ability. That said, Emeka Egbuka, in my opinion, still a come zone, is I think the safest wide receiver of this draft class. And so I think that there has been some buzz about Egbuka to the Seahawks for a lot of different reasons. I do think that there is some smoke there's some fire behind that smoke, and that absolutely could be a candidate for Seattle at number 18 or in a slight trade down scenario.
When we come back, it's time to tackle the tackle position, and it is a rock-solid tackle group. It's got depth. It's got top-tier talent. We're going to get to the first rounders coming up next here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. We are continuing our position-by-position draft preview. And, Rob, we've pretty much got the hay in the barn. We've got tackles today, and then we've got tight ends, and we're done. We are almost wrapped up with a week until the NFL draft. Let's talk tackles. And look, Seattle's got Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas coming back this season. Lucas, for the first time in what feels like half a decade, is going to be fully healthy in the offseason. And that's great news for Seattle. Charles Cross, there's a good chance Seattle picks up the 5th-year option to at least extend their window for a contract extension for him. They've got the cap space to do it. But you've still got 2 guys that neither of them have proven to be that cornerstone tackle yet to this point. And so you've got questions beyond this season. And tackle, you've talked about it, could end up being positioned with those 5 picks in the first 3 rounds that John Schneider might be more aggressive trying to address than maybe a lot of fans expect, especially when you consider the talent, starting with a wave of first rounders that very much a couple of these guys could be top 10 picks. If a couple of them fall to Seattle's lap, it does create some intrigue.
It absolutely does. I mean, because this is a quality tackle class. It may not have the top end talent, of what we've seen in the past. I think that Josh Simmons from Ohio State could have been a top 10 selection if he had not suffered a significant knee injury. I believe it was in week 5 of this season. Still, I think that when you go back to his San Diego State tape when he was at right tackle and how well he played at the left tackle position early this season, and just the medical technology that we have now seen with players coming back from injury, I still believe that he is one of those players. I mean, I almost considered him as far as one of the guys that, could be somebody that Seattle would just be available to Seattle in a dream scenario, because I just viewed him as a plug and play tackle, whether it be the left tackle or right tackle positions. He is a dancing bear. I mean, his agility, his length, the tenacity in which he plays, to me, he is absolutely one of the first round cinches in this draft, assuming, of course, that he gets the medical clearance from NFL doctors that I expect that he would be. Armand Membou from Missouri is one of my absolute favorite players in this draft. I mean, he's a young player. He's a highly physical player. Anybody who watched the combine workout saw just how intense and athletic that he is. Again, another player that in a dream scenario could be available to the Seahawks. I just don't think that that's very likely. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he winds up being the first tackle off the board, quite possibly in the top 10. And then finally, Will Campbell from LSU. I know that he's got short arms. I just don't care. I mean, our dominant against SEC competition for the past 3 seasons, similar to Kelvin Banks, frankly, then I just think that you got to throw that kind of stuff out the window and just say, hey, this guy could be an absolute superstar, whether it be a tackle, whether it be a guard, just get this guy on your football roster, because the durability, the agility, the football character, guys that just play through injury, both of these players absolutely check those boxes.
I think 3 of these 4 could be all-pro caliber guards. I'm going to go that far because you've talked about Membou's physicality, and if you watch the combine, the athletic metrics that this guy has, could he go inside and play guard? Absolutely. I think he's better suited to play tackle. But in Seattle's scheme, if Will Campbell, we talked about this. I actually did a mock draft earlier in this cycle where Seattle traded up a few spots because Will Campbell fell, and they traded up with Atlanta. Will Campbell is another one of those guys to me that if he is in striking distance, you've got to think about rolling the dice a little bit with your draft capital. And some are going to say, well, why would you trade up for a guard? Well, have you seen what this Seahawks team has looked like the last couple of years? Put a really good guard in there and watch this offense take off, especially one that would be a great fit for this offense that Clint Kubiak's going to be running in. Will Campbell is another one of those really athletic dancing bears that can do that in the tackle spot. He can absolutely go inside. And this is the thing I love about Will Campbell. There's some lunchbox nastiness to this dude, like junkyard dog at your elementary school on the playground type antics. Like, this guy plays the game with an aggressive factor. And I'm with you in this case. I do think arm length can matter sometimes, but he is so quick out of his stance that he gets his hands into guys before length really matters. So I think Will Campbell is absolutely a fantastic football player, and I would love to see him at the guard spot. Excuse me. At the guard spot for the Seahawks, I would love to see him slide in there if he was available. And Kelvin Banks, we've talked about, might be the best zone blocker in this entire draft class. And you put him at guard, that can make your run game sing in Clint Kubiak's offense.
No question about it. And that, again, is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about that. I want to kind of quickly switch over and start talking about some of the day 2 prospects I think the Seahawks are going to be considering here, especially talk about Josh Connerly Jr. I mean, for a couple of different reasons. For one, I think he's got a realistic chance to sneak into the bottom portion of the first round, perhaps even as early as number 18 overall. For number 2, this is a Rainier Beach prospect. I just mentioned Emeka Egbuka, from Steilacoom High School. What about the Rainier Beach prospect? And this is a guy that has the agility, has the upside. He just feels of all the tackles that we've talked about so far, Corbin, to me, Josh Connerly, you give him 2 years, this might be the best tackle of the bunch. And his agility, to me, is one of the things that really jumps out. I mean, 1.71 split in the 10. 1.71 seconds in a 10-yard split was the fastest of all the offensive linemen that were that ran at the combine, and you see that on tape. I went to his pro day and just very excited about his upside. So to me, he is one of those candidates we have to mention as a possible first round, maybe day 2 guy that would absolutely be a good fit for the Seahawks. And then again, just kind of jumping in with these day 2 selections, I think would make some sense. Ariante Ursary. I mean, this is the Big Ten offensive lineman of the year. None of those guys at Michigan, none of those guys at the national champion Ohio State, Minnesota. But when you consider the fact that he's 6'6", 331 pounds, and still ran a 5.01 in the 40-yard dash, and again, it's been a 3-year starter to left tackle position and really kind of locked that down for Minnesota. I think that this is a player that, again, checks an awful lot of boxes for the Seahawks.
And I'm glad that you mentioned both those guys right now because, look, there is a scenario where 5 or 6 tackles go in the first round of this draft. There is absolutely a scenario. And listen, Connerly was a key part of Oregon making that deep run, getting into the college football playoff. He's another one that I think, in fact, I've got him down as a guard on my draft sheet when I'm looking from a Seahawks perspective. I think he's a guy you slide in at guard, and he's a plug-and-play type player. Ursary, to me, is a tackle exclusive because of his size. He's got more length, but he's got the athleticism that if a team wanted to try him at guard, you could. But to me, he's more of a tackle prospect that if you could get him on day 2, even at pick 50 or 52 for Seattle, if you have any reservations about Abraham Lucas, Ursary could make some sense, and he would have the athleticism you're looking for at the tackle spots in this offensive scheme. We're going to dive into a couple of other day 2 prospects as well as our day 3 gems coming up next here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team, go Warriors, or diving into player props. From 3-pointers from Steph Curry to steals to assists from Jimmy Butler, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. And plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my trusty co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. We are tackling the tackle positions today, our final offensive line group. We're nearing the end of the road. Tons of profiles. Rob, we've probably talked about 300 players over the course of this pre-draft time. And I know for you, it's probably more like 600 players with the work that you do. There's plenty of guys we haven't touched on. But let's talk day 2. And you already threw out a couple of players, Josh Connerly as well as Ursary from Minnesota, both players that we expect are probably second-round selections, but in certain scenarios could be first-rounders. There's a couple of other clear day 2 selections at the tackle spot that are worth discussing here.
Well, I think that one of them that actually matches up with what Seattle's looking to do is actually a small school player. And it's rare that John Schneider and the Seahawks have been willing to invest top 100 selections in small school prospects. But at the same time, Charles Grant from William and Mary, to me, is absolutely one of those candidates that deserves that type of consideration. 6'5", he's 300 pounds. He erased some of the level of competition questions at the Senior Bowl very similarly to the way that the much more talked about, Gray Zabel did. And so to me, Charles Grant has the has the agility, has the size that you're looking for. And so I think that he would make some sense here, not as a guy that you necessarily are looking to start immediately, but as you mentioned, I mean, it feels like that Abraham Lucas is going to be able to return to that starting right tackle position. And it doesn't matter, even if Seattle traded up for any tackle in this class, they are not going to likely be able to unseat Charles Cross in the left tackle position. So this is a spot that Seattle is going to be looking to draft a player and develop them. And we didn't mention Mike Jarrell before. Of course, this is Seattle's late round selection a year ago. But his agility, I think, again, is a terrific fit in this offense, the wide zone, and where it's going to prioritize the agility. That's one of the things that makes Jarrell intriguing. So I don't think that this is necessarily a huge position of concern for the Seahawks. But if they were intrigued by Jarrell a year ago, I guarantee you they're going to be intrigued by Charles Grant this year as well.
It feels like the last couple of years that we've seen John Schneider be more willing to make those stabs at FCS players or smaller school players than what he would have earlier in his tenure. And I think it goes back to, there's two things here. One, the gap is closing in terms of the talent gap between FCS and FBS players. And also, really, after COVID, if there's a positive from it, it feels like teams now have an easier access to those Division II, Division III prospects than they ever did before. And now you can do virtuals and you can do Zooms. Like, there's all kinds of ways that you can find these guys that you maybe couldn't before. So it would make sense the Seahawks would be in on Charles Grant, especially because of the Senior Bowl connection. That would make a lot of sense. One other player that I want to mention here, and we talked about him during the guard segment, but I want to talk about him a little bit more today because Wyatt Milam never played guard at West Virginia. He was a tackle. And when you turn on the tape, yes, I know he's got shorter arms, and this is another guy that I just really don't care because I love the mindset that Wyatt Milam plays with. And he did not test great at the combine, but he's one of those guys that just in pads moves better than he does when he's wearing the underwear Olympics gear in Indianapolis. He just moves better in pads, and it feels like there's more burst and more speed to him when he knows there's somebody that I get to deck because this dude is physical. You turn on West Virginia's tape this past couple seasons, and there are so many plays where you're seeing him in gap-oriented plays where he is just knocking dudes off the ball, and then he's climbing to the second level. He's really good in the zone blocking game as well. That's why I've had him slated as a guard in my draft report, and in my big board, he's listed as a guard. But he's been a really good tackle in a Power 4 conference. He's been a starter for parts of 4 seasons. The guy's been a staple in West Virginia's offense, so I'm not going to sit here and say that it's impossible that he could play tackle at the next level. In fact, he might be a really intriguing one for the Seahawks to look at either one of those positions. I'm much more open to him playing tackle now than I ever was even a few weeks back, now that I've had a chance to watch more film and just see the nastiness and the quickness out of his stance that he plays with, getting his hands on guys and finishing them.
Yeah, Milam's a good football player. And as you talked about, I mean, he doesn't have the elite arm length, but at the same time, he's quick, he's intelligent, he is highly durable. And those, to me, are some of the traits that the Seahawks have always prioritized, whether it be offensive line or any other position. I'll mention another guy, Chase Lunt from UConn. Obviously, the Seahawks drafted Christian Haynes from UConn a year ago, and I think that makes some sense just because, you're going to have some intel there with the former Seahawks head coach Jim Moore Jr. as the head coach. Chase Lunt was a 4-year starter at the right tackle position. I recently wrote an article for Seahawks.com kind of talking about the idea of, trying to draft players who have some familiarity with some of their teammates. And the point was more about maybe doubling up on prospects the way that, say, the Seahawks did a year ago with the two cornerbacks from Auburn, or the year previous with the offensive lineman Oluwatimi and Mike Morris from Michigan. I think that there is something to be said for when you have that familiarity, then the younger players might be able to kind of hit the ground running, so to speak. And so Chase Lunt, pairing him with Christian Haynes, again, a couple of guys that started off a long time with the UConn Huskies, they might be able to come to Seattle and be successful. So Chase Lunt is another one. He's 6'8". He's 300 pounds. He's a guy that doesn't look like he should be able to move the way that he does. But at the same time, kind of like Wyatt Milam, as you mentioned before, he just plays faster than he actually times. So I'm intrigued by him. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Logan Brown. He's one of my favorite of the day 3 prospects. And this was a guy who was a 5-star recruit at Wisconsin. And we know that Wisconsin, of course, traditionally has been one of the teams that just churned out offensive linemen all of the time. Logan Brown wound up basically transferring to Kansas, where he finally got his opportunity. I think if the Seahawks watched the way that Dominic Pooney at the guard position became a star for the San Francisco 49ers a year ago, it might see Logan Brown at the tackle position as being a kind of a similar type of a prospect. So again, to me, Logan Brown and Chase Lunt are two of the few tackles on day 3 that I think could actually wind up projecting as starters, and maybe not in year 1, but certainly in year 2, they're available this year.
As far as position flexible players on day 3, Jalen Rivers from Miami is a guy that has played guard and tackle against ACC competition, and this past season only gave up 1 sack. And when you turn on the tape, he was another Senior Bowl guy, so John Schneider in the scouting department know all about Jalen Rivers. He's not the biggest guy, not the most athletic, but he's another one. When you turn on the tape, you can see the smooth athleticism that he has, being able to play tackle and guard. I actually think that he is better suited as a swing tackle than a swing guard at the next level based on the tape that I've watched. But he's another guy that could maybe be a swing entire offensive line, which John Schneider has loved those kind of guys. Jalen Sundell last year being somebody that he brought in as an undrafted free agent that had played everywhere. Rivers has played both guard spots. I think he can play both tackle positions in a pinch. I don't know that there's starter upside, but he definitely could be a guy that can be a swing tackle or a swing guard in the NFL. And my big sleeper from the tackle group, and he's a big dude in terms of height. You talk about Chase Lunt being 6'8". Jack Nelson from Wisconsin is 6'7.5". He's not much shorter than Chase Lunt. Another guy that's tall. He's lean. He's a little bit bigger than what Lunt is. He's 314 pounds. That's what he measured in at. And I don't have any testing numbers because he didn't do anything. He wasn't invited to the combine. And as far as I know, did not do any testing at Wisconsin's pro day. So we don't have any numbers to base off of, but he was one of the top zone blocking tackles in all of college football last year, according to Pro Football Focus. You turn on the tape and you see a guy that kind of is built like a basketball player with that 6'8", 314-pound build. I'm going to list him at 6'8". He's 6'7.5". Let's just round up. He's a guy that looks like a power forward in today's NBA with his build. He doesn't look like your traditional tackle, and he moves like that. He's got smooth athleticism, quickness. He's agile. And I just think when you're looking for guys that are going to be cut out for a zone-centric scheme, I don't see him mixing in with a gap-oriented offense. I don't think he has enough power. I don't think he plays with quite enough aggression. But he absolutely can dominate opponents in the zone blocking game with his athleticism. He's another guy I think is a swing tackle. I would go as far as saying he might actually be a guy you can develop into a starter if you need to be. Whereas Rivers, I see as a player who has a little higher floor coming in, but I view him as more of a swing guy in the NFL.
No, I 100% agree with you. I especially am very intrigued by Rivers. I thought that he made some real splashy blocks at the Senior Bowl. Mario Cristobal, as the head coach at Miami, is well respected around the NFL for his development of offensive linemen. So to me, he's really intriguing. And I would argue basically the two players I just mentioned, Logan Brown from Kansas, Chase Lunt from Connecticut. Lunt is definitely the higher floor guy. But Brown, to me, is the guy that has the higher ceiling. And so that's what is going to be interesting to me. That the Seahawks are among the teams, Corbin, that have, historically decided to kind of gamble on offensive linemen in the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds. And it's easy to understand why, because if you're able to hit on those guys, those are the types of positions that get the big dollars in free agency. So roll the dice on a Mike Jarrell as they did a year ago and see if you are able to turn a late round pick into a future starter. The fact that Jarrell was able to start a couple of games for the Seahawks a year ago, I think that just bodes well for his future in Seattle, especially in an offense that very much caters to his skill set.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back tomorrow, I will be riding solo, and I'm actually going to be covering the tight ends because we've got mock draft frenzy coming up next week, 12s. You won't want to miss that. You won't want to miss the tight ends tomorrow, one of the deeper position groups in this draft class. Going to be diving into day 1, day 2, and day 3 prospects. You won't want to miss it. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and thanks for listening. Go Hawks.